Okay. I believe that we have gotten to the, trying to clear out a few windows here. Give me a second. Notifications. I believe that we have gotten, you know what? My gavel is about 10 feet away. Back in a second. We have a quorum, and so I'm going to call this meeting to order at 7:31 p.m. All please rise if you can for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence or silent prayer as your conscience finds appropriate. And please remember those who lost their lives in the events 22 years ago on September 11th of that year. Thank you all. Please be seated. You guys still there? It's quiet. Members of the council, you have before you, and I have somewhere before me, an agenda. Are any changes required, any amendments required to that agenda? And do any of you have stated conflicts of interest, any conflicts of interest to reveal to us for any agenda items? I will take silence. I'm looking to see if any microphones are unmuted. I don't see any, so I'll take silence as being that there are no amendments required and no conflicts of interest to reveal. May I please have given that's the case, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second the motion.
Thank you. Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Kalan. Is there any discussion of the motion to approve the agenda as submitted? Are there any public comments? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote of the visible council members. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Inyang.
Aye.
Councilmember Kalan.
Aye.
And Councilmember Mejia, I do not see. Are you here, Councilmember Mejia? Okay, I abstain. The motion passes 5-0. Next on the agenda is a presentation, proclamation in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. And again, I'd like to find it on my screen, if at all possible. Looks like I closed that. Give me a second. Since this is Hispanic Heritage Month, I'm going to start with Spanish and then move to the English. Proclamación. Considerando que la celebración de la Semana de la Herencia Hispana comenzó bajo la presidencia de Lyndon Johnson en 1968 y fue ampliada por el presidente Ronald Reagan en 1988 para cubrir un periodo de 30 días que comienza el 15 de septiembre y termina el 15 de octubre. Y considerando que el mes nacional de la herencia hispana es una oportunidad para celebrar las ricas tradiciones culturales y honrar los logros importantes de nuestras comunidades hispanas y latinoamericanas, y considerando que los hispanos han participado a lo largo de la historia de los Estados Unidos en el apoyo y defensa de los principios e ideales sobre los que se fundó este país, y considerando que los hispanos han hecho contribuciones significativas en todas las fases de nuestra vida económica, social, cultural y política, y por cuanto nuestra comunidad ha encontrado fuerza en la diversidad de nuestra gente, con fe y pasión, una sólida ética de trabajo y una profunda devoción por la familia, la comunidad hispana ha ayudado a llevar adelante nuestro legado como un símbolo vibrante de oportunidad para todos. Y por cuanto nosotros como comunidad y como gobierno estamos orgullosos del enriquecimiento cultural traído por la diversidad de la población hispana. Ahora, por lo tanto, yo, Alan Thompson, alcalde y el Consejo Municipal de Riverdale Park, por lo presente proclamamos el periodo del 15 de septiembre al 15 de octubre de 2032 como el mes de la herencia hispana. Haga un llamado a todos los funcionarios públicos, educadores, bibliotecarios y todos los estudiantes estadounidenses para que celebren este mes con ceremonias, actividades y programas apropiadas. Y ahora en inglés. Proclamation, whereas the observation of Hispanic Heritage Week began under President Lyndon Johnson in 1968 and was expanded by President Ronald Reagan in 1988 to cover a 30-day period starting on September 15th and ending on October 15th. And whereas National Hispanic Heritage Month is an opportunity to celebrate the rich cultural traditions and honor the significant achievements of our Hispanic and Latin American communities. And whereas Hispanics have participated throughout the history of the United States in support and defense of the principles and ideals upon which this country was founded. And whereas Hispanics have made significant contributions in all phases of our economic, social, cultural, and political life. And whereas our community has found strength in the diversity of our people, with faith and passion, a strong work ethic, and a deep devotion to the family, the Hispanic community has helped to carry forward our legacy as a vibrant symbol of opportunity for all. And whereas we, as a community and as a government, are proud of the cultural enrichment brought by the diversity of the Hispanic population, now, therefore, I, Alan Thompson, Mayor of the Town Council of Riverdale Park, hereby proclaim the period from September 15th to October 15th, 2023 as Hispanic Heritage Month. I call on all public officials, educators, librarians, and all Americans to celebrate this month with appropriate ceremonies, activities, and programs. Thank you. I always enjoy that proclamation celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. And that brings us to the mayor's report. Let me get the screen up so you can see those of you who decide to show yourselves on camera. So I mentioned this before the moment of silence, that today is, for many of us, a somber anniversary, a remembrance of the events of 22 years ago, the 9/11 attack on New York City, and the response, still ongoing response to that attack. And I remember all too well where I was all day during the day-to-day. Several times I would stop and notice the time, and I could remember exactly where I was at that time, what was going on, what I was worried about. Moments of joy when I reunited with family members. I was over in Montgomery County when everything clogged up and had to get back. And it's a somber day, and it's a day that I hope to never see a repeat of a day like that. And I hope that we as a country, we as a species, as the human race, can seek to avoid wars and activities such as that in the future. Moving on to the topic that I had hoped we could quit talking about, but that is COVID, and I don't feel that I can quite quit speaking about it. There's some competing statistics, but I believe that roughly 20,000 people died of COVID in the United States during the month of July. 2,000, and that's much smaller than it has been, but it's still a significant number of people. A number of excess deaths coming on from long COVID, and the other impacts of COVID on people's lives are still up there, and we seem to be on an upswing right now. So as I've said before, the only good data right now is coming out of wastewater. And that has been increasing across the country. The numbers are up by a factor of 4 or 5 from late June, early July. And that's indicating that that's coming in. And I personally have seen a lot of people who until this summer have avoided infection who are suddenly catching it. I have, at least so far, managed to avoid it by being extremely careful. And I hope that all of you will consider that we have an increasing caseload, increasing load on the medical system, and consider again the possibility of masking up. Also today, I can't remember whether it was the FDA or the CDC approved the newest COVID vaccine that's expected to be released and available later this week. I will be rolling up my sleeve as quickly as practical to get that into me. And I hope that many of you will also. There's some preliminary clinical data that shows that it's quite effective against many of the variants that are circulating right now. Although there are a lot of variants, there are about a dozen variants that are significant right now in the population and transmitting between people. So that is all I have to say on COVID this evening. In my town crier report, I mentioned another looming disaster. I hate to be discussing disaster all the time, but unfortunately we have a bunch of things going on. And that is the climate change emergency. And quite a wake-up call in July. I mentioned this also in my town crier report, that July was the hottest month on record for the planet. So if you looked at temperatures all over the planet and took an average about where they should have been, whether it was winter in Antarctica or summer in Sweden, then they were all almost all high, and the average deviation from the previous averages, then it was the hottest month for the entire planet in history. And the history of recently dates back to the mid 1850s. So it's the hottest month in certainly 170 years. And people who study long range climate, looking at tree rings, looking at things like that, suggest that this might well be the hottest July, the hottest month in the last 100,000 years. And just to put that in context, I put it in my article, and now I can't remember the exact numbers, but there were Neanderthals wandering the face of the earth 40,000 years ago. And this is more than 2.5 times that long. So it was quite a deviation. And as I said, we in the town, we as individuals and as a government need to get serious and very quickly about reducing our carbon impact, carbon footprint. And we have a unfortunate decision for the town council tonight where we have to do a balance. Balance is always difficult, a balance between immediate public safety needs and long-range climate needs. And I think we will have an interesting discussion about that later. The last topic I'm going to bring up, it's been a bit of a controversy in town over the last couple of weeks, are the bike lanes being installed on Rivertech Court. I've been having discussions with a lot of residents, a lot of non-residents, a lot of electeds inside and outside of town. And I think that we are making a good decision to move forward with those bike lanes, installing the separated bike lanes. And many of the people who contacted me are upset about their lack of advanced knowledge of it, but they are still supportive of the safety issue, and I think that that's a good thing. And one of the facts that I keep wanting to share with everyone who we discuss this with is that there are many international studies, scientific studies, that show that installing separated bike lanes, like we are going to be doing late this week, is is good not just for the bicyclists. So the painted bike lanes are good for bicyclists, but nobody else, and not that good for them. But the separated bike lanes are good for bicyclists, they're good for pedestrians, and they are good for drivers. And by that, I mean that accidents and deaths for all three groups when you have separated bike lanes are reduced. And that is what I believe has driven the town to go in this direction and to go ahead with installing it. Now, that being said, there were a lot of people who were unaware. I believe the town has done a fine job of communicating. We had communications in a lot of different fora with a lot of different people, including with the administration of the school. But in the spirit of we can always do better, then I think perhaps we could have done a slightly better job. We might have been able to reach out to some of the parent groups. I'm trying to get contact information from one of the people I talked to so that I can participate in some of the CPA parent groups on Facebook, and maybe town staff can also weigh in there. But with that, there is some room for improvement, but I think we have done a fine job, and I think we're doing the right thing moving ahead with the installation later this week. And with that, I will wrap up my report. Are there any questions for me? Don't see any microphones unmuted. So I will go ahead and hand it off to the town manager for his report. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council and members of the community and the staff team. I echo the mayor's comments as it relates to the commemoration of 9/11 being a very somber time. On 9/11, I often also think of the first responders. I had already left law enforcement before then, but I had a lot of friends that responded to the Pentagon that day. I know how their experience impacted their lives and continues to impact their lives. And I think about our first responders today. I just add that and share the mayor's sentiments that hopefully we never see something like this again. On the bike lane, since the mayor just finished with that, I will echo that with communication, we can always do better. And I think we have done a good job, but I've talked with the staff team that works with communications, and we will always look for ways to improve. There was a request that we have a roll-up of all the times that we've discussed this issue. We're still working on that. We have a draft covering calendar year 22 and 23, but it dates back several more years. So we're going through and we're pulling together the references and that, and hopefully we'll have that ready to share with the council at the next meeting, which is next week. So it's good to note that we don't have a break between meetings. On Hispanic Heritage Month, I'm going to ask Ms. Barnes, can you just comment briefly on the events that we're planning to participate in or are participating in?
Certainly. We're really excited to be hosting our first movie night of the year as part of Hispanic Heritage Month. We will be showing the movie Encanto in Riverside Neighborhood Park on September the 21st. We do have a rain date of September the 28th, just in case, but it's going to be a fantastic event, and we really can't wait to see everyone out there enjoying this really fantastic movie. We'll also be partnering with our neighbors at the town of Edmonston and a couple of their own partners on an event called Salsa and Salsa. And that will be happening in October. I don't have the exact date right in front of me, but we're working out all of the details for a really neat event that involves making salsa and learning to dance. So it'll be a neat event held at Tanglewood Drive Park. So that more information will be forthcoming. We'll have something at the beginning of Hispanic Heritage Month, the movie night, and then towards the end, we'll have Salsa and Salsa. So we're doing some exciting things this year.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. A few other items. There were some emails about the dog park, so I just want to address that. So Park and Planning, MNC PPC, owns and operates the dog park. And they had told us a number of weeks ago that they were making improvements to the dog park in terms of drainage to address ponding of water. It didn't work. There's no other way to describe it. The ponding of water this time was much worse. So staff have visited the site. In addition to emails, there's been conversations with staff at MNC PPC, and we don't have an update because they don't have an update. But as soon as they do, we'll communicate that to the mayor and council and the community at large. Another issue that was recently raised was crosswalks. We've had a number of crosswalks throughout town removed, and we're waiting for the contractor to coordinate with a subcontractor to put in the new crosswalks. So I want to apologize for the delay. We have a meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. With the contractor. We are hopeful that, that they're going to begin striping, perhaps even on Wednesday. But we have been assured that the crosswalks at Queensbury and Rhode Island will, at the last date, will go in this Thursday. But we are pushing, and we are hopeful that that all the crosswalks will be replaced within the next few days. A couple other things. The municipal center project has begun. So we have some change. The contractors met on site this morning, and demolition has begun. So the restrooms are being torn out. Walls are coming down, doorways are being opened up. There's a lot going on, and that's good. It's been a long awaited project. We had some hurdles. We know we're going to have some more change orders to navigate. So that's coming. For example, we need to come back and talk to the mayor and council about what they would like to see in terms of the dais, things of that nature. So Director Lewis will be coordinating that. I'm not sure if we'll be back in next week or the first week in October, but we'll be back to get the council's input on finishing touches. But it's good that the work's underway. The downside to that is it's now a construction zone. So we have been open 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, to receive walk-in customers. We will not be able to have staff in town hall during this construction phase. I do want to report to the mayor and council that we've been keeping track of how many walk-in customers we receive. And on average, it's less than 0.5 of a person per day. Some days we receive no walk-in customers, but we are putting information out in the community about how we can continue to deliver services during this construction, as well as we will continue to offer in-person meetings for anyone who requests one. They just have to contact us. All the contact information remains the same, and we can schedule an in-person meeting. We'll be using either a room over in the police department, or we can meet off-site. But if someone does want to meet with us in person, we will be there. A few other items. The revenue update that we normally have, we don't have that on the agenda this evening. We're going to do both next week. Instead of doing one and one, we're going to handle both because we had one delayed at the meeting that ran late at the end of August. So we also have, I have an update on an RFP. So we had issued an RFP. It was for speed camera firm red light camera firm and a parking camera firm. And hopefully, as the RFP was written, it said we hope to have one firm provide all three services. And so we went through a standard bid process and quite a complex review. There was a staff team. We had 5 members of the staff on that staff team, 3 from the police department, 2 from administrative services, which includes our special project coordinator who supervised or coordinated the bid and the responses. So we will come to you all next week with a recommendation in terms of seeking authority to now negotiate a contract. So we have the proposals, we have recommendations we'll share next week and be looking for authorization to negotiate a contract. And then we'd come back to you again with a contract for you to review the contract and to either amend it or approve it as presented. Plummer Park. I wanted to address Plummer Park a little bit this evening because it's a project that's been stalled. And we have shaken that project loose. I want to thank Director Lewis. We had been working with one of our engineering firms, and we were getting, I'll say, stuck on a question of stormwater management. We switched engineering firms that who also have landscape architects on staff, and they've come up with a workable plan to get this project unstuck. And so we'll have an update for you. We'll be back to you all in the coming weeks for a general update on CIP, but we'll be back with a schedule projecting when this will be complete. I foresee it being complete sometime in the spring. Matter of fact, the landscape architect the other day in a meeting said, I think you just need to move forward. And so we're glad that that project has become unstuck. There's a walk and talk coming up on Saturday, September 23rd at 9:30 in the morning. And we are going to start at the town center. And that's all I have this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Any questions for the town manager before we move on the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Foe, go ahead.
Mr. Town Manager, just questions about Waggertail Park. So is it the staff's, not assertion that the repair work was completed by MNC PPC on Waggertail Dog Park?
I will say this, there was no sign that any other work was occurring.
Yeah.
And so we're assuming that they had completed what it is that they had started.
I had sent you a text earlier and I just wanted to get this as part of the record. Do we know the last time they came to speak to us about the park?
It's been a number of years, I believe, and they had a retirement. They had a point person who came and addressed the mayor and council. That person had retired, and then Ms. Barnes, I may stand corrected here. Did they have another person come and address the council then? Yes.
Yes, I don't know the date right off the top of my head, but we did have a recent update. I'd have to go back and look.
Okay, I remember them at one point speaking to us about potentially moving the site, and then I never remember hearing from them again. And I was my concern was that this is the standard of communication that I've grown accustomed to. And so many members of the general public have a tendency to ask us, why aren't we doing things in these specific areas? We've been having dialogues about improving our park space for 6 years, and literally next to nothing has been done. And it's just so frustrating at a community level. I just wanted to state this publicly, like, we fight for those spaces. We just have a tendency not to be heard, listened to, or addressed in professional manners. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. Any
Mr.
additional questions or comment? Oh, Mr. Town Manager, do you have?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I don't know how I forgot this, but I just looked down and I saw a note I had on my laptop. The recordation has occurred. The documents for the infrastructure transfer of Riverdale Park Station is complete.
So it's ours.
It's ours.
Councilmember Enyang, looks like you have some questions now.
Do we have witnesses to that? Is that official? Hopefully that's true. Glad that that's, would love to see a copy of that at some point. Great news, seriously, great news on that. My question was actually around Plummer Park, and glad to hear that it's sort of being unstuck for what we have later on in the meeting, and what I'll talk about in my report as well. A question in terms of the actual, I know that you mentioned that the design was already done, and I guess there's a contractor that is sort of already engaged, and we're sort of like moving through the process. When was the design finished, and is it possible to sort of see what that looks like? It would be great to sort of get a sense of like what that park would look like. Let's see what's envisioned, I should say.
Yes, so a couple of things. There's a concept design, and the concept design was developed through a community charrette, and the Neighborhood Design Center produced, I believe, 2 options, and then we went to the council and got feedback. And the Lazy Meadow design is the design that was selected. So that's the direction the staff is moving in. Now, this landscape architect that works for Pannoni, the engineering firm, is working up the documents so we can actually put this to bid and then move forward with the tree plantings and the other plantings and the walking path. I'll call it stone dust. They call it decomposed granite. It's basically the same thing. And as far as where you can find that, Director Barnes, I believe we have that on the website. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And also in the budget book, when if you pull up that project and the CIP budget, the photo for that is a condensed aerial view of what it would look like. But we can find the link to the rendering that Neighborhood Design Center put together, and we'll send that out to the whole council as a refresher. It's been a minute.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Okay, any additional questions or comments? Okay, let's move on to the finance report.
Mr. Jones.
Sure, thank you. Excuse me. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight's finance reports cover the month of July, August, as well as a year-to-date for a total revenue, total expenditures, and then revenue net expenditure total. So for the month of July, revenue totaled $585,709. Expenditures totaled $651,673. For the month of August, we had a revenue total of $222,652 with a total expenditure amount of $676,312. And then the year-to-date total that we have for the current fiscal year, 2024, revenue total $808,361. Expenditures totaled $1,327,984. One thing I'd like to note here, if you noticed in current fiscal year as well as 2023 and 2022, revenue net expenditures has a negative number there. The reason for that is that the town historically has received the majority of its revenue in the months of October and November. So while currently we're running at a negative number there, and it's been that way for the previous fiscal years. The reason for that is the majority of the revenue that we receive will be in the next 2 months. Additionally, another note I'd like to make is just the timing of revenues. In fiscal year 2023 and fiscal year 2022, if you notice, the figure was 261,000 for fiscal year 2022. That number increased a little bit for 2023. We were at 387,000, and in this year, it jumped up to 519,000. The difference between this year and the previous fiscal year is for the month of July, expenditures were a little bit higher. I'm sorry, August were a little bit higher. We had, with the timing of the payroll, we had an additional payroll listed there in the month of August. So yeah, that covers the finance reports for the month of August and July. And if there are any additional questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Deputy Director Jones.
Excuse
Are
me.
there questions from the council for Deputy Director Jones? Okay, you answered all of them, all the ones that I was going to ask about the various changes from year to year. So appreciate you being ready with those. Any questions from members of the public? Okay, I don't see any. So with that, may I please have a motion to adopt the monthly finance report?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the finance report subject to audit.
Seconded.
Motion from Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Foe to adopt the report subject to audit. Is there any discussion of this motion? Are there any public comments? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Inyang.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia appears to still not be here. Councilmember Callan.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the correspondence summary. There's no correspondence during the month, so that's a pretty quick agenda item. Doesn't get much shorter than that. And that will bring us to the fire department report. Chief Lanfair, I see you're here. Please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. So first, I just want to echo the comments of the mayor and the town manager about 9/11. So 343 firefighters, as well as many other victims, World Trade Center, Pentagon attacks, and United Flight 93. And I too was working in Montgomery County Fire on that day, so I won't forget it either. So on a just a little more positive note, just if people are curious, those of you that remember the Air Florida crash in January of '82, none of the jurisdictions around the Washington area could communicate with one another. And if anybody's listened to the tapes, the communication tapes from that day, that was painfully obvious. So one of the outcomes of that is now all the first responders in the council government's area have the capability to directly communicate with each other at the scene of the incident. So, and at the Pentagon, that was terrible event, but it proved that interoperability worked. So I did want to try to put a positive light on that, because I think every jurisdiction in the Washington, D.C. area participated in some form or another at the Pentagon on that day. And I think it went into a full week. So that said, so recruiting is on everybody's mind. We've talked about this before. So we've gone to the farmer's market a couple times over the summer. Actually grabbed 3 new members out of that, and they've gotten through the background stage. And then just this past Friday, we participated in the University of Maryland College Park's First Look event. And we made about 65 contacts. We have about 10 of them, at least 10 of them coming to the station tomorrow evening, meeting night, to start the application process. So along those lines are challenges kind of threefold, getting them through the county process, which can be relatively fast, or it can take some time, keeping them interested while they're awaiting the county process, and then getting them registered for the required classes once they've completed the process. So some of the good news, so EMT and firefighter 1, they're offered at MIFRE, which is on Calvert Road, so on the University of Maryland campus. So as students, they won't have too far to go. So we had planned to do a at the station recruiting event in September, but I think we're going to push that to October, because even getting 10 members through the process, that's going to take a couple weeks in itself, and I don't have the bandwidth to get a lot of people in. So, but anyhow, we were very pleased with the First Look event. I attached, I don't know if you could see them, but when I talked to Ms. Barnes this afternoon, I did attach some of our recruiting flyers in both English and Spanish for your information, and I believe she told me she was going to distribute those so everybody could see them. We also plan to do a fire prevention event in lieu of Riverdale Park Day in mid-October. And by the end of the week, we should have a, we're still working out some location details, because our station itself, it's such a small footprint. It's not a great place to have a lot of the public there. So we're looking at a couple other locations, but I think that will be finalized by the end of the week. And then finally, I did submit, as requested, a review of Chapter 33 of the Town Code to the town manager and the town clerk, and I'll certainly continue to work with them, and then the mayor and council to finalize that document, whatever that process is. Does anybody have any questions for me this evening?
Thank you, Chief Lanfear. That was a fantastic report full of information. I appreciate especially the fact that we know that the first responders on 9/11 in this area, at least, had a coordinated response to the Pentagon attack, and that's good news. That's I appreciate the note of positivity in your report. Council members, other council members, do you have questions for Chief Lanfear? Any members of the public? Okay, thank you very much. Hope to see you at the October event, and keep me in the loop. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely, and I will provide a report for October, but I will be overseas the first Monday of October, so I will not be present at this meeting.
Okay, thank you very much
Okay.
for the heads up.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that brings us to council committee and ward reports. And let's go ahead and start with Councilmember Smith, Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Town Manager, everybody else who came before me tonight. Appreciate you all. Good to see everybody again. It's as we wrap up the summer, I've been struck in spending more time around town center lately. How alive it is, particularly on the weekends. I remember around 9 years ago, or however long it was, when my wife and I moved here and we went to town center for the first time, looked around and said, man, this looks like, you could have something really cool here. And there's like nothing other than this, convenience store. Little did we know that I'm sure lots of people that are here tonight were already deep in working on making that a reality. And just seeing folks walking around that aren't like, it's great when our neighborhood, our community gets out and walks around in our town. But I've talked to people from, coming up from Silver Spring, Northern Virginia, met a woman from Spain who was talking about how Manifest Bread was just like the European bistros back where she lives back home. So we are a destination, and that is fantastic. I appreciate all the work town staff and this body have put into that, making that a reality and continuing to make it even better. So thank you all. And then just lastly, real quick, as folks on the council here know, a couple years ago, my best friend, who was at the time the mayor of Hyattsville, Kevin Ward, took his own life. Today would have been his birthday. And so in addition to all the other remembrances today, I think about that. Kevin made some mistakes, some big mistakes, but there's no mistake that makes you irredeemable as a human. You still have people that love you, and there's always somebody that's willing to help, including the relatively new suicide crisis line. You can pick up a phone and dial 988 and talk to somebody right away who can help. So miss you, Scooter. And if you need any help, there's the number, 988. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Foe, Ward 2.
Some really excellent words, Councilmember Smith. We all need to be more open with our own struggles and share that only makes us more human. It's amazing how me putting that out in that world has come back to me multiple times, just from people within the community saying, like, thank you for sharing about your mental health struggles. I too have struggled as well. And it's just a kinship and a bond that oftentimes masculinity causes us to hide. A lot of dialogue about 9/11 today, and anybody who can remember that time period knows the fear that was in this country at that time period, or during that time. I am in a unique circumstance as a United States history teacher where we originally dialogued heavily about it after the Cosbys were dealing with students that were experiencing history firsthand. My students this year were born in 2010. So it is just like any other day. A lot of the things that they hear, they're hearing for the first time. Such a awful day in this country's history. I show in my classroom a series of videos. One specifically is the man in the red bandana, details a day trader, aspiring first responder, who was in one of the World Trade Centers, and he ends up rescuing 12 people while perishing himself. And I always tell my students, I don't know how to put this in a positive light other than this, is I am always incredibly grateful that I live in a world where so many people are willing to run up those stairs to help those that are going down. First responders, police, general heroes amongst the lot. Mr. Rogers said it best. You'll always find those people in those incidents. And sometimes we have to grasp at that to find anything positive in there. We are surrounded by people that are willing to do the unimaginable to try and protect ourselves. And I love that portion of the dialogue that I get to have with 11, 12, and 13-year-olds. Prince George's County Public Schools had a murder occur outside Duval High School today. That's 5.4 miles from my house, 17-minute drive, and a continuation of abhorrent violence related to weapons in this country. I pray that I will never see an incident like this in my life. And it seems like it's more and more likely. And every single day, it even increases on me, my fear even more, having a son that has to go through these institutions. We are not having an honest dialogue about weapons in this country. We have a judicial system apparently willing to protect any and all gun owners, regardless of previous history of violence. I don't know what any of the solutions are, but I am willing to submit, or I am willing to support any of those solutions that help remove guns from our street, that help reduce violence across this country. I am readily aware that we have a council member who was in a mass shooting in Alabama. And that's the scariest thing I can imagine in this world. And it appears as though in this country, it's common fodder now. And I just, again, want to utter every abhorrent word that I could towards violence of this nature. It's disgusting that this consistently happens in our country, and that you know, our federal government is not willing or capable of acting on behalf of what benefits the residents of this country. See what else. I loved Mr. Town Manager hearing the updates on Adam and Emily Plummer Park. It is something that is constantly sitting on the tip of my tongue, but I know how many important things that we have going on in this town. But I had a remarkable happenstance, and being on this council has been really, really awesome. Other council members started talking about the park for me. And that was a really incredible thing. I get this email from Councilman Inyang. I constantly am hearing Councilmember Smith talk about it. And it's renewing my invigoration, yet it's also simultaneously bringing new voices into the fold that most absolutely need to be heard. I feel like I've pushed real hard for this. And I want to advocate on behalf of everything that I would like to see in that park. But I feel like this process needs to move forward, hearing from those voices of that community that was slighted. I want to hear from families. I want to hear from Maya Davis at Riversdale, any educational experts that we can talk to. And I want to move forward with a restorative process that brings to us an absolutely beautiful park, but also something that gets the history fundamentally right. We live in a world where facts pertaining to history education seem to be somewhat debatable at this point. And I feel that the perfect response is highlighting a voice that was stunted, telling the story of our community, and allowing those family members to be present to ensure that restorative justice can be a part of this dialogue. Last but not least, there's been a lot of talk about bike lanes, and it's neat to hear. There's been some pushback from the College Park Academy community, feeling like they haven't heard enough. And then there's that anger inside of me that says we've been talking about this since 2019. But as the mayor likes to point out, engagement is never going to be a bad thing because you might be able to pull more people into the fray that way. But I just wanted to holler at council and at staff. When I go around in our community, when I walk to town center and I see those brand new walkways and highlighted for pedestrian safety, and I see the updates that we've committed to across this town, we have put our money where our mouth is for pedestrian safety in this community, and we will continue to do so. We are like, I was honestly just walking down the streets, imagining what it must be like for a person suffering from a physical disability in this community. We are making it more accessible to them, and that fills me with a sense of pride that we are a community of and for everyone. I've rambled on too far. Mr. Mayor, I yield the rest of my time. I hope everybody's doing well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I'm not sure you had any more time to yield, but I enjoy the enthusiasm. It's great to hear from you.
Well, it's like, honestly, this council is very active and engaged. And I ran into Councilmember Inyang at Denizens the other day, and he just fires me up. He's bringing new ideas to the table. He's going to talk about it here tonight. It's exciting to be pushed to be something better. And I think there's a lot of people in this council trying to do that right now. And I'm really proud to be a part of this and staff. And I'm really proud to be a part of this group.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. Councilmember Lingua, Ward 3.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think the fact that a municipality like ourselves, as well as other municipalities, not only in this area, in this state, or in this, but even across this country, is a testimony to the resolve we have as a municipality, as a state, as a nation, to carry forward after events that we all witnessed and some of us experienced 22 years ago. And as long as we continue to keep doing this, we will continue to show a resolve that helps define us as a municipality, as a state, and as a nation. I've received a report regarding SGS and essentially doing night work, starting at about 7 p.m. in the evening and going till approximately 3:30 in the morning. According to the report, this is happening through weekends as well. It seems that the employees working there are parking close to and facing the homes and are driving cars. According to the report, they're mufflerless. And that they idle for substantial periods of time in the early morning hours. And then are, to quote the report, tear out of the parking area with lack of mufflers and screeching, faulty belts. Essentially, to me, that sounds like a description of aggressive driving. These are coming, this report is coming from residents who are affected by this. It seems also that that they're parking along this side, the residential side, as opposed to parking over by the space available along Madison Street, where there are other commercial businesses. And they're also witnessing urination as well on properties from this night crew. It's while the report says there's an understanding about workers coming in at 5 to 6:30, and that's improved in terms of they're not playing their radios loud. It seems that the night crew over there have no regard for the fact that one, it's nighttime, and that they are along a residential neighborhood. And with that, I will conclude the report.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. Councilmember Inyang, Ward 4.
Good evening. Yeah, I think 9/11 for me was interesting. I was in 7th grade actually in Newark, New Jersey, and with clear sight lines to the Twin Towers, and in such a different time then. There was one computer that had access to the internet, and like the whole school. And I was like one of the few people who can access it. So my job that day was trying to like find reporting online. It just was not the same that it is now with, notifications and alerts. And so it was weird looking online and not seeing anything, and then looking outside the window and seeing smoke and the second tower getting hit, and then the building's dropping. And so it was a tough time. I had friends that, parents never came home. And I remember the feeling of waiting, I think 12 or 13 hours for my dad to make it home, who was working in New York. And I think he had to walk the whole way. It was a crazy time. And always thoughtful of all those who were affected and lost their lives and who risked theirs to sort of save others. As we transition to some more positive updates, one, I texted, there's like a group chat of folks in the Riverdale Park Station community. A lot of the dads have a chat, and I just mentioned that, it's official, the road transfer has happened, and the chat has been blowing up in the last, 25 minutes or so, however long it's been, with, a lot of, I can't believe it. My kid is in first grade before this happened, but, better late than never. And already ideas of like, okay, now the feeling that there's a more active mechanism and voice to be heard about ideas of sort of how to make the community safer. And so it's one of the reasons why I ran for this position. And so I look forward to sort of helping bring to life some of the things that we've already talked about in our plan, and sort of listening to the community and seeing what can be changed in the future. But super excited about that. I appreciate all the work that the, Director Lewis and the rest of the town staff has done over the years to make that a reality. Also, the Madison Hill neighborhood has been dealing with trespassing for a very long time. It's literally years or so with, and one of the main culprits was, from Parksdale High School. There was a fence supposed to block students off from sort of cutting through the forest and cutting through the back of yards. School just started a few weeks ago, and there's a resident that sends me emails of videos a couple times a week. And I'm happy to hear, working with County Council Member Olson's office, who's sort of been helping us sort of run this down, that we're being told now, again, just like the road transfer, we will wait to celebrate until we actually see it in person. But confirmation that this should be handled by the end of this week, and that the fence should be sort of, I guess, extra consideration being put in to sort of not make it easy to sort of be jumped. And so we will we'll celebrate that as well. But again, that's something that, small things, and the work that we're doing, this is really the small things that end up having a huge impact in the lives of folks. And so I'm hoping that can be resolved. And I know that's years in the making. And so I was happy to report that, and we'll see how that progresses. And then just lastly, around sort of Plummer Park, and Councilmember Fly, I appreciate the words that you said. Really for me, I spent 2 weeks. I just came back from a 2-week trip in Ghana, and which was completely, it was a great retreat vacation. My wife's family's from there, and sort of seeing that side of her family, meeting that, but also took some time, and we did some traveling, and, we went to some of the slave castles and sort of did the tour, and we saw the door of no return, and just sort of the impact of what the transatlantic slave trade has done to the world, especially this country, has not been lost on me. It's been weighing heavily on me since I've returned. And then knowing that, we're all sort of living on sort of former plantation land, and what does that mean, and how are we remembering it? And so it warmed my heart to have Betsy Otis Otto, who is who hopefully be joining later on, to sort of speak a little bit about ideas that she's had. And so there's a lot of work that's already happening in the community between the University of Maryland, between their 1856 project, which is the universities entering into the United States, basically a consortium of larger universities that are thinking about their relation with slavery. And so all these different things are happening. And so I think there's an opportunity here. And I think Plummer Park can be part of that, as how do we use this momentum to think not only critically about what the past is, be thoughtful in terms of how we honor those and memorialize the past, and then, you know, what can we create that's lasting to sort of remember into the future. And one of my goals will be sure to that. One, Riverdale Park is considered in that and it sort of plays a forefront of that. And then two, that we use the collective will and momentum to make sure that you know, we can leave our mark. And there's a larger conference that is being planned. The University of Maryland is planning for all the different college consortiums for 2026 in the fall of 2026, which also coincides with the 250th anniversary of America's founding. And so we'll have all the thought leaders around the country literally descending on the University of Maryland there. And I think it'd be a great aspirational goal to sort of have, you know, Plummer Park and our programming also sort of have that as a goal that we want to sort of coincide as well. And so we're early days now for sure, but I appreciate the enthusiasm from this council and the rest of the community and sort of making this a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Inyang. Very, very interesting perspective on where we are and where we live, and what the places that we live have seen in the past. And I also want to give you my personal congratulations for the fence at Parkdale. As I think you know, I've been working on that for years, and I think that your recent perseverance and sticking to it and twisting people's arms got it over the top, and really appreciate your work. I don't think it would have happened without your intervention and your constant checking in and making sure that people are still working on it. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I received a text message from Councilmember Mejia. She is with a family member at urgent care and is unable to join us for that reason. She had been planning to, but has a sick family member to stay with. And that brings us to Ward 6, Councilmember Kellogg.
Good afternoon, Mr. Major, and good afternoon to my council members. As we are talking about 9/11, at that morning, I was at the McDonald's here with my two daughters. My baby daughter called me on attention, said, Dad, look, something's happening. The TV that they have on the McDonald's there. Something's happening. When I look there, I see the Twin Tower. One of them has been struck by the plane. Then, while we are looking, another one came. We thought it was a mistake or the pilot miscontrol or whatever. Another one came and struck. No, that was a problem, man. Then my daughter said, Dad, because they witnessed the rebel war in Sierra Leone. The other one said, Dad, the rebel has come to here again. The rebel has come here again. I said, no, there is no rebel here. This is a problem. So as for me, what I have for these first responders and those who died in that incident, I will pray to the Almighty God to forgive them their past mistakes and give them heaven. And those who survive, may the Almighty Allah continue to bless them. This has been a history which anybody in this country can remember this 9/11 until the end of the world. And so far, the first responders, may God bless them. They do their best. Some of them lose their lives. May God bless them. May God, those who lose their life, may God forgive their sins and give them heaven. So as one of our council members was talking about gun control, the route for gun control is start from when you have your children, when they are small kids. It start from there. People who are buying toys gun for their children, toys gun, buying toys gun for their children. They play with these toys gun, they shooting, putting water inside. When they grow up a little bit, when they have the real gun, they thought it's a toys gun. Right? They can shoot, like they take it like play, like game. Point to someone, bang, the person die. Let the people stop buying toys gun for their children in this country. Let them stop buying these toys gun. When they want to play with gun, when they grow up, they join the police force or they go to the army. That will help to control the guns on the streets. So as one of the council members was saying, how we can control these guns on the streets, this is what I see. Let the parents stop buying toys gun for their children. It's very dangerous. When they used to play with these toys gun, if your father has a pistol or anything, the day you mistake put it down, he's going to pick it up and strike. And when he strike, it don't bring a good news. So this is the thing. So, and again, I don't have much to say. I'm just praying for these first responders, those who lose their life in the 9/11. May God give them heaven. Those who lose their life. Those who survive, may God continue to bless them, the first responders and others. So, Mr. Mayor and council and staff members, this is what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Kahlon. Appreciate your words. Next item on the agenda is public comments on non-agenda items and consent agenda items. Are there any such comments? Don't see any microphones being unmuted or hands going up. So let's move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda is adopted as a single vote without discussion or debate. May I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Foe. As I said, immediately to a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Inyang.
Aye.
Councilmember Kahlon.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 5-0. The consent agenda items are adopted. That brings us to the next item, the single legislative action item for this evening. I'm going to ask staff to provide a brief introduction. We didn't have a chance to discuss this at the work session because the meeting ran late. Can we have that introduction?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll pinch hit for Mr. Smith, who is out of the office this week. So at the height of the pandemic, the town considered our ways to respond. And one of those ways was to amend the personnel manual to require mandatory vaccinations. And as the mayor commented earlier in his report, COVID's still here. But the legal landscape has changed as it relates to mandatory vaccination policies. So Mr. Smith and I have been in touch with Legit, Local Government Insurance Trust, and their attorneys specializing in human resources. And we've talked through mandatory vaccinations for municipal government. as well as, well, we did then when we adopted the policy, and we have more recently as well. And the recommendation is that we no longer have the strong legal footing that we had at the time because things have changed. So this is a reaction to the changing conditions. And it's not removing the requirement. It's changing when the policy is effective. So the recommendation is that language be added that the policy will be effective when there is a federal, state, or county COVID declared emergency. And so that's the change that we seek. And we would ask for introduction of the ordinance this evening. And then we would bring this back to you next week as well for your consideration of approval. And with that, I'll take any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Are there questions before someone is ready to introduce? Or do we want to, someone want to just introduce and we can pick up discussion after everyone's had a chance to read it?
Yes, Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilmember Kalan.
I have a question for the town manager concerning this mandatory vaccination for COVID. Okay, if I can recall, when the COVID breakout 2019, we took all the necessary vaccine. I took Pfizer twice and booster. So, are you going to force me again to take another vaccine into my system, chemical into my system? Because what I understand that this vaccine have started killing people, giving some people like erratic, get messed up with their brains. So we have taken it already. I took 2 and then the booster, making 3. So do you think I can take it again when it's a mandatory? That's my question. Pardon?
No, sir. This is a town personnel policy, and the mayor and council are not governed by the town personnel policy. This is for town staff. And we are saying that we have a policy now that we need to change because the legal footing has changed. But if in the future, if there is a county, state, or federal COVID declared state of emergency, then the vaccinations will be required again.
Or if they declare COVID vaccination again, so it will require.
But it will for staff, sir. It will not for elected officials.
But okay, let me say, during the COVID-19, most people didn't take this vaccination. Even some staffs, they didn't take it. What is the consequence do they undergo?
Excuse me, sir?
I said, the first vaccine that they came out, most people didn't take it. Most people, and they're roaming around, they're working, everything, they have their offices, they are working, but they didn't take the vaccine.
Well, sir,
what penalty do they carry?
Sir, I can't speak for anything outside of town operations. I will say that
No,
this
let's
policy,
forget about town operation. These chemicals are not, you can't just load chemical in your system.
respectfully, sir,
Mr. Kalan.
Now listen, let me
Mr. Kalan, you are out of order.
But
We
yeah,
have the rules of order. You are supposed to discuss what is before the council. And you are discussing items that are beyond the scope of this policy. The policy is whether.
okay, well, let's wait for the federal to clear it so that If the federal say everybody to take the vaccine, we can go again and take it. That's all.
Okay, so thank you for your comments.
Uh,
Any additional questions, or is someone ready to introduce this legislation?
Mr. Mayor, would we need a motion? Is that what you're asking for? Is there a
Just
motion?
say, I would like to introduce this legislation, this ordinance.
And
Okay.
it's on the screen now. Can you move it up to, yeah, whoever's controlling the screen so the council can see what the purpose of the ordinance is.
Yep, I would like to introduce the ordinance. I don't know if there's a number for it. Ordinance 2023 Ordinance 11 OR 11 for the purpose of amending Article O Workplace Safety Section 06 Mandatory Vaccination subsections A Scope and C Proof of Vaccinations of the Town Riverdale Park Personnel Manual to restrict and clarify when this policy is in effect, and to clarify vaccination reporting requirements and generally relating to revisions to the town personnel manual.
Thank you very much, Councilmember. Because this is just an introduction, we do not need a second. We will discuss it at future meetings, and it will come up for a vote soon. Moving on the agenda, next item on the agenda is under unfinished business, council committees and assignments. As we've been discussing for a few months, the council committees are perhaps not ideal for our current form of government, the way things are working now. And so working with the council with some documents over the last 6 weeks or so, then I sort of scoped out what it is that I can view the committees as doing, what legal requirements we are currently constrained within by the town code. So we do have to keep several of these committees going and with membership until such time as we might want to amend the town code. So these are my recommended committees. There's the Finance Committee, chaired by Councilmember Lingua, with members Councilmember Smith and Councilmember Kellon. Public Safety is a required committee. I'm extending its reach to be Emergency Preparedness with Chair Councilmember Kellon, members Councilmember Foe and Councilmember Inyang. There's a Public Works Committee that is mandated by the town code, and I'm adding infrastructure onto its name, and have as chair Councilmember Inyang, members Councilmember Lingua, Councilmember Mejia. The last of the mandatory committees, the Legislative Committee. I've sort of rescoped what the Legislative Committee might be doing. Chair will be Councilmember Foe, with members Councilmember Smith and Councilmember Lingua. Moving on to the non-mandated committees, but that doesn't mean they're any less important. Community Affairs and Human Services, that renaming was inspired by some suggestions from Councilmember Inyang, chaired by Councilmember Mejia, with members Councilmember Foe, Councilmember Kellon. And last but not least, the Economic Development Committee, which was Economic Development and Recovery for a while, again with suggestions from council members, has been expanded to be Housing and Economic Development, with Chair Councilmember Smith, members Councilmember Inyang and Councilmember Mejia. I'm ready to discuss any of these memberships, and I hope that someone will move to approve the committee memberships as submitted.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
could you discuss and talk a little bit about, I guess probably for the rest of the council, I guess for everyone, and about the have you thought about sort of the expectations for sort of like chair versus members? Is there a later time we should talk about that? Is this just sort of like the committees themselves and the membership, or is
So
it
this
fair to talk?
This is just the committees themselves and the membership, and the chair and the membership will determine how active the committee is. The expectation that I have is that each committee, either the chair or member, will report on the activities of the committee on a quarterly basis. I would like to set up a schedule for that so that we don't have all 6 committees reporting the same month. So maybe have two committees a month, and that would bring us roughly quarterly to having reports. And you know, the document we were working on has suggested areas of coverage. And I guess one thing that I have not mentioned is that at the moment, there is not a sustainability committee. We have the Citizens Sustainability Committee, the Green Team, and I'm hopeful that everyone in running their individual committees will take sustainability into account, because that is a core need for our community to take that into account. Does that answer your question, Councilmember Enyang?
It does. Thank you.
Of course.
And then I guess the last question in terms of like balance of the committees, I'm assuming everyone chairs one, is on 2 others.
Exactly.
Okay.
And these committees are, you know, public bodies, just as the council is. And so meetings need to have an agenda. They need to be announced in advance. Minutes, they can be pretty minimal, but any minutes do need to be kept. And subject to the Public Information Act and the Open Meetings Act. So there is that responsibility that's also on each of the chairs. But any other council member can attend another committee's member meetings and can speak not as a member of the committee, but of course, as a member of the council and a member of the community. And I can tell you that in the past, that many of these committees were very active. So Public Works and Public Safety Committee on occasion have had regular monthly meetings to discuss what's going on. The Finance Committee used to have at least quarterly meetings to go over various items, but and I believe that the Legislative Committee, as I'm imagining it might happen, should meet regularly during the legislative session of the state legislature to review what items are under consideration by the state legislature.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Smith, go ahead.
But just curious, what would be the scope of these committees? And I mean that in terms of, you know, less the issue areas is what are we authorized to do? I say this is the proposed incoming chairperson of the Housing and Economic Development Committee. And I see my colleague from Ward 5 on here as well. I think there are a number of housing issues in town that we would love to have public meetings about and invite property owners, especially those with multifamily units, to come before the council and the public. Is that something that we would be set up to do?
Absolutely. You call a meeting, you invite someone to come and talk to you and have the meeting and have an in-depth discussion about issues you might have with that.
Outstanding. Thank you.
And as I said, there's a document circulating. It's attached to your packet this evening that has you know, my ideas and some ideas from other people about these committees and what they've done in the past and what they might do in the future. So please review that document for some ideas. Any additional questions?
We won't have subpoena power, right?
No more.
Yeah.
No more than the town council does. We don't have subpoena power either. We can just ask people to come and we can apply some various pressure, mostly just the pressure of shame to get them to come speak to us.
Shame Pena.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember Callan.
I will call you, but not now. I will call you, then we will discuss something between two of us.
Okay, very good.
All right, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Is everyone okay with this division of duties? I have this nice spreadsheet and was balancing various things that I know about each of you from working with you for many years, or in some cases just a few months. And I did my best to balance based also on feedback that some of you gave me about which committees you would like, and did my best to balance, and hope I met that goal.
Well, just thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council Member Anyang, for the work on this. It's clear that a good amount of thought went into it. But looking at my assignments here with the housing and economic development, of course, there are wards that have significant housing issues that need to be addressed, and there's my ward that probably has the most new housing being built over the coming years, in the medium term future, I think. So thank you for that work.
Of course. Okay, can I please have a motion just to get it onto the floor?
So moved.
Second.
A motion to approve. I'm not sure who got the second there. Anyang made the motion. I think that Smith. got the
David can have it.
Lingua.
Lingua gets the second. Okay, any additional council discussion about the committee membership and chairmanships? And I will mention that the previous appointment of Councilmember Lingua as the vice chair of the council that we did in late July, I believe, that is still standing as a separate action of the council. Are there any public comments on these committees and their membership and chairmanship? Okay, hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Anyang,
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia is not present, Councilmember Kalan,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Riverdale Park Community and Municipal Center Project, 6601 Baltimore Avenue. I had I guess I can pass on that. I had a very good discussion that involved the community center with County Council Member Olson late last week, and he is intrigued and interested. And I guess the other item is that we've been having such heated discussions with College Park Academy about the bike lanes that we've not had a chance to discuss the possible shared use of the Army Reserve Center, the 6601. And but I've sort of been getting the feel in the discussions that I've been having and hearing that they are perhaps losing some interest in it. We'll have to see how that is. Mr. Town Manager, do you have additional news or information?
The only thing I would do, Mr. Mayor, is to second your observation that there may not be strong interest. I think the Academy is still working through what their plans may be about expansion more generally. I have had conversations with some of their staff about other locations as well. And I was asked at one point that if the town were to at some point have a gymnasium at that location at 6601, whether the town would provide a user agreement. And my response was something to the effect of, while I can never speak for the council and certainly cannot speak for a future council, I think the town would certainly entertain a user agreement if in fact the town had a gymnasium at that location. And I took that to mean that interest in acquiring it for their own purpose was waning. The other thing I mentioned on at the last meeting that we can arrange tours on a Thursday and a Friday. They don't have to be consecutive dates. The time that I was given was 5:30 in the PM. And I would ask that the council, if you could contact Director Barnes by email to indicate your interest and with Thursday or Friday works best for you. And we will try to get that coordinated. Actually, if you could put your second and first, second, and third choices, say over the next 3 weeks, and we'll get something scheduled. And that's not counting this Thursday and Friday. I think we need to give the staff of the Army Reserve more notice than 3 days.
Thank you, Mr. Listician. One other topic, I received an email from Laura Katz, resident Laura Katz, suggesting that we might look into building resilience. I can't remember what the IC stands for, the BRIC funding for funding the stormwater. I think that we need to get a little bit closer, at least towards controlling the property before we can do that. But I think it's an excellent idea and we should start planning in that direction. Any additional questions or comments from the council or members of the public about this topic? Okay, let's, no one has questions. Let's move on to new business. I had hoped to discuss new business item number 1 at the work session, but again, we were out of time. Can go back to the agenda. There's actually, yeah, there we go. So this is part of my concern about addressing part of my concern about climate change and the rude wake up call that July was for us and for the planet. And many people in the community have contacted me and believe that reforestation is an important aspect of addressing climate change. And I did a good bit of research, and the best practice that was recommended by several organizations, and they have the studies to back them up, is not to have a focused and dedicated attempt to plant trees, but where you have places where trees have been cleared and there's still trees on the edge of those spaces, to simply let the trees grow back in from the surviving forests, grow back into the places that were previously cleared. And from my own experiences being in various places in the county, I'm aware that MNC PPC has large areas that they own that are still being used for agricultural purposes. So for instance, the Jug Bay Recreation Area has a lot of forest, but they also have, I would guess, a few dozen acres that they seem to grow corn on. And there doesn't seem to be any recreational use of it. And I would think that it might be better to let the forests grow into there. There are many other areas similar to that around the county, a lot of it in South County. And so I wanted to bring up the possibility, I'm not sure that we're ready for a motion quite, but I want to bring up the possibility of sending a letter to MNC PPC requesting that they allow this agricultural land to lapse back into being forest land as a way of combating climate change. So that's the background, and love to hear any thoughts that the council has. Councilmember Foe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think anything that we can do to promote reforestation in our park areas or any areas around the state is something that we should advocate on behalf of. Our climate situation grows more serious by the day. And I told you that I was in Vermont during the massive rains, and just seeing those communities impacted. We need to have this at the forefront of our dialogues at every single meeting, potentially. This is to the topic. It's something I wish was in my ward report. I mentioned to this briefly too, but I hope we could have a staff rollout on it, or potentially bring in somebody from the Chesapeake Bay watershed. I told you about our removal of a tree. We just submitted a program, and I don't know the exact area, but areas south of East West Highway, my home included in this, are eligible for additional funds for trees in our community. So what the Chesapeake Bay watershed is willing to grant is $150 per native species that's willing to grow over 25 feet. Mara and I found out for a large portion of our community, that's actually $300 per tree. Every household in this community, businesses in this community, renters in this community can access these funds to help utilize tree planting in our community. Mara and I are going to get big old trees, 7, 8 years, 30-gallon trunks, $300 a tree. We're going to walk out of there getting 3 incredible trees that would retail for roughly $1,000 for, dollars on. It's going to be an absolutely incredible program that we need to take advantage of. I didn't mean to go off topic. I just forgot to mention that previously. And you talking about tree planting made me think of that. So thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you for wrapping up quickly, Councilmember. But I just wanted to bring this up under new business, and we can discuss it at future meetings as a possible topic. So let me know what you think about it, and we'll come back. Okay. Next item, are there any council or public comments before we move on? Okay, let's move on to new business item 2, schedule for review of vision and commitment statements and diversity and inclusion policy. Mr. Town Manager.
And Director Barnes, if you could lead this conversation.
Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. As we discussed at a previous meeting, there is a need to revisit the vision and commitment statements as well as the diversity and inclusion policy to reaffirm the town's commitment to all of the things that we've previously committed to, with perhaps some updates or some tweaks. This is a proposed schedule for review of the vision and commitment statements and the diversity and inclusion policy. It would be starting at a work session for just additional discussion. And then the proposed action would be at the following legislative meeting. This would allow us to get through all of the vision and commitment statements to include a new one for data-driven decision-making by February, actually March of next year. So this just gives a framework. We certainly can change that over time, but it'll allow us again to review everything in a relatively timely fashion. I know that the Sustainability Committee will be reviewing the vision and commitment to sustainability this week. We've had some discussions back and forth on that. And we have asked the Riverdale Park Business Association to weigh in on the business and economic development vision and commitment statement. So we're seeking any sort of input from the groups that already exist in town that are currently active. So I believe that really outlines the purpose of this item. If there are if anyone would like to discuss it further or make any changes, like we said, this is just a framework for the discussions moving forward.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Councilmember Enyang, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yes, I appreciate you laying this out and creating a schedule to get us through most of the legislative agendas throughout the year. I'm just curious in terms of the order in which some of these are happening. I'm assuming we're trying to start with things that are more ready to go, or we've had feedback already, like sustainability as an example. That being first kind of makes sense. I know the Green Team has been very active. And so we just would hope that if there are organizations that we would want to reach out to get their feedback, that there's enough time for it. So was there thought process in terms of how this was organized, in terms of which goes first? Would be my question.
There was not. All of the vision and commitment statements are obviously very important, and they all are very written in a way that I think the town still would support all of these things, but we're looking for feedback on all of them. Perhaps there may not be, we may still be in a good place on some of these. So there wasn't a specific process in pairing them together, but of course, sustainability is something that the town talks about quite a bit, and we do have an active green team. So it made sense for that to be one of the first ones on the list, but there was no specific rhyme or reason to how we partnered these different statements.
And if I could add, in response to the inquiry, the dates that we have there are the dates that we would plan to put these on an agenda for conversation. It's not a date for the council to act. So next week we would plan on coming in and saying, here's what they say. There'd be an opportunity for the public to weigh in, advertised meeting, advertised agenda. Anybody that has an interest, that gives them an opportunity. But the council will direct and drive when these are actually ready for the council to reaffirm or to edit, and then reaffirm what the vision and commitment statements are. So this is just to try to get the ball rolling, and obviously subject to however the council wants to proceed.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lingua?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. My question regards, has there been consideration sending some of these, say, for example, housing neighborhoods, business and economic development, community engagement, and transparency, just to name a few. But has there been any consideration of sending along notices about these and requests for comments to CCAR CDC?
Certainly, that's something that we can do. We do invite anybody to weigh in on these things, but it is the town's vision and commitment, so we'd be welcome to input from CCAR. Is there a specific, just the two that you mentioned or the three that you mentioned? If you had any others that you would recommend, we'd be happy to share them with CCAR and request some feedback.
I think, this is, that's more of a question for Dr. Nola, Director Parker, and the folks on the board. I think just general email letting them know that about the schedule, I think would be sufficient to let them know and get the ball rolling, and allowing them time to be able to weigh in.
Certainly, we'd be happy to make that outreach.
Thank you.
Any additional council questions or comments? Any public comments or questions? So my only comment is that the schedule starts a week from today, and it's not been advertised, and we have ways to reach people that are almost instantaneous, but I think we might have a a lower response. Has the green team been given a heads up that the sustainability vision statement is happening so soon? That one is particularly concerning to me. I know they're meeting tomorrow night, but I don't know if they are aware.
I've actually seen some notes on some things that they've been looking at. I know that it's on their agenda for tomorrow night, but of course, if we need in any case, if we need more time or we receive more feedback, we can certainly slow it down and bring these things back at other meetings. That's not a problem at all.
Okay. So this is an aggressive start on the schedule, but we can bring them back around if we feel like there's a interest in the community for bringing them back up. Okay. That all sounds good. Do we need to take any action this evening, or is this just a sort of a mood of the council and we can move ahead with that as the plan?
Yeah, it's just general consensus, sir.
Okay. Looks like everybody's quiet, so I think we can assume that this is a good schedule, and we'll start next week with housing and neighborhoods and sustainability. Fantastic.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Go ahead, Councilmember.
thank you. Just so that we're clear, you're seeing this as really a general schedule just to be able to get dialogues going, but that essentially dialogue on any of the areas that you have presented here is something that will be going on up until the time that final drafts are presented and something's passed by the council, correct?
Exactly. And that will be a formal process, and it will be on the agenda in advance of any meeting where something would be adopted. And I would hope that we would advertise the likelihood of that happening in the town crier, since that's one of the better ways to communicate with the whole community.
Okay, and that being said, you're still looking at some type of structure in terms of when to have essentially initial final drafts completed. Is that correct?
So I'm thinking that that it may be that some of these can just be introduced at the next month's work session. So if we discuss, for instance, the October 30th business and economic development and infrastructure, if those turn out to be non-controversial, then they could be introduced for adoption at the work session on the 27th and adopted in early December. But if it turns out that people are more interested, that there's more discussion required, then they could be delayed and there could be other discussion before adoption.
Yeah, that's kind of the part that gives me a little bit of heartburn. You know, the point that you brought up before, we're looking at a really quick timetable on this turnaround. And if we're really looking to try and get input back from the community regarding this and being able to get it out front on a repeated basis over an amount of time, you know, you might be seeing final passage of these, you know, coming 2 months or even, you know, a full quarter later.
Mhm.
That's just my thinking on it.
Sure. I mean, it doesn't, it all depends on the council's feeling, and we can take time to do it. I mean, it's not something that's another possibility is that we could just, and I'm not recommending this, I'm just saying, I think honestly getting started sooner is better, is we could just bump these dates all by a month and put the diversity and inclusion policy in late March 24. But
Oh, I'm all for getting it started.
yeah, and I am.
Including part is what I'm thinking, the part that might get extended.
Sure. And I'll just point out that most of our existing vision and commitment statements were pretty straightforward. You know, we introduced them, we discussed them, and there were not a lot of edits typically, and then they were adopted. So I think that you know, the concern of staff is just that we should revisit them to see if things have changed, and that we want to do this. Can you
No, that's fine.
okay.
You were about to ask?
I was going to say, do we, so the data-driven decision-making is the only new one. All the others look familiar. So I think that's correct. Is that right?
Certainly. That's the only new one. And I guess I should have also mentioned that there may be in other discussions areas that we want to create a vision and commitment statement for. So the council and the community will really drive the schedule. This is just giving a little bit of framework for the discussion. But some of these things, as we discuss them further, another vision and commitment statement might kind of grow out of that. So it's just again, just providing some structure, but the mayor and council and community will drive the timeline.
Okay, very good.
Um,
Go ahead, Councilmember.
may I?
Yes.
One other point, being that we're starting this process, and so is that we can ensure we have a very clear and open dialogue with our newfound friends at University of Maryland. I take it we're going to keep them apprised of this process.
I'll speak to that. So yes, and in listening to your concerns and others this evening, sir, I think we need to make sure on the staff side that we are soliciting input. We have our community input email. I'm going to ask Ms. Barnes to make sure that we put something out in every status and information report, and that as part of our regular cycle of posting on social media, that we continually push that the town is looking for input on these statements as the council considers edits. And we certainly would hope that of the 2,500 followers that we have, for example, on Facebook, that members of the university follow us. If they don't, then we will encourage them to do that, or on X, formerly known as Twitter. But I think we need to reach out to everyone, sir, and I think your points are well taken from the staff side.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, then let's move on to the next agenda item, which is new business item 3, Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission Annual Budget Forums, October 4th and October 17th.
Good evening again, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. This is just an item that we talk about every year. It's a very important budget forum that comes up in October. This year, the dates are on October the 4th and the 17th. The council has taken a variety of approaches in the past and providing comment during the budget forums. Sometimes the council chooses to do that in person. At other times, we've written letters. There is a list in the cover memo of a variety of different things that the council has talked about over time. Just items that the town had listed as priorities for the park and planning budget forum. So that was the feedback provided by the town over the years. I think we have 7, 8, maybe 9 things on the list, and over time those have changed a little bit. This list is most recently from last year. These were things that came up at a work session last year that were very important to the council. So this is just, again, a condensed list from last year. And then behind this, there is the press release that Park and Planning puts out every year for this public forum.
Thank you, Director Barnes. I will mention that the forum on October, what are the times of the forum? Do they start at 7? Is that correct?
Correct. And they're virtual again this year.
So I have a potential conflict on October 4th with the Mixed Use Town Center Local Design Review Committee. So if we want to have someone speak at that one, it would have to be, I would nominate Councilmember Lingua to be there. It's a public hearing and anyone can speak. So in fact, every member of the council could sign up at both meetings and pick a topic that you want to propose. And in fact, other municipalities do that. They have multiple people speaking on a given evening, and they will often pick different items to propose be added into the budget.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Councilmember Foe, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'd be glad to appear on behalf of the town if you so desire. I was willing to throw complaint in there without changing process. right? I need to be critical of myself first, changing process. I at least want to bring some positive energy to that meeting on behalf of the town.
As I said, I encourage everyone to.
No, and Councilman Lingua always has attended those things, and I would like to support his efforts as well.
Mr. Mayor, as Vice Mayor, I'll be happy to be at that meeting.
Fantastic. And I will sign up for both of them. The discussions can go on for quite a while, and when you sign up, the order in which you sign up is the order in which you speak. And so I would recommend registering early unless you want to sit through a lot of people before you get a chance to speak. Okay, do we want to go over the items, or should we just take this list as it is, and people can suggest reorderings? I think that sending a letter from the town overall with a full list, and then having council members advocate verbally for the ones that they find most compelling. And I will do an overall, as I said, at least on the 17th, I'll do an overall presentation on behalf of the town's list. And so I would love to, and let me tell you, there's not much time to speak. They give you 2 or 3 minutes, and it's hard to squeeze a lot in there. But I tend to sort of do a highlight and say the areas and touch on a few of the projects individually. Councilmember Fove, you had your hand up for a little while. Did you have another comment?
No, I just wanted to suggest that I just wanted to take a longer look at it and resonate on it, and maybe discuss it again next week before finalizing the list.
Sure, sounds good. We actually have a meeting on the 2nd of October, and so we can adopt a final list at that time, but certainly bringing it to the work session and trying to get it final at that point would be a good idea. Any additional council discussion?
Yes, if I may.
Please.
Speaking with folks over at Riverside Neighborhood Park, an addition of I guess for the lack of a better term, because I don't know the proper terminology, to essentially augment the backstop to have a half canopy over it, so as to corral foul balls.
Okay.
As folks know, that sits right next to a drainage ditch that runs down towards the pumping station.
Mm-hmm.
So they would appreciate that. I know the folks who come out and play softball would appreciate that.
Okay.
So, and it may be what we want to do is take the improvements we'd like to see at Riverside, make them a 1A, 1B, 1C type of listing.
Exactly.
So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Okay, I think having a hierarchical list with topics would actually be a good idea. So if we can do that maybe before next week, Mr. Town Manager. Okay, any additional discussion? We'll keep discussing this for the next few meetings. Okay, let's move on to new business item number 4, motion to authorize vehicle substitution of previously approved acquisition of 3 marked police vehicles. Mr. Town Manager?
Yes, Chief Quixons, can you provide some background, kind of walk the council through where we've been and where we are? You're muted, Chief.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm talking on my phone, but on my computer screen. So tonight, first, good evening, everybody. Tonight, we are requesting the mayor and council approve a motion to authorize the vehicle substitution for what was previously approved for the purchase of 3 marked police cruisers. As the mayor and council are aware, acquisition of certain vehicles continues to be a challenge. On July 11th of 2022, the mayor and council authorized the purchase of 4 police vehicles. And since that time, we've only been able to purchase or to receive 1 of the vehicles. We now have an option to acquire 3 of the remaining vehicles under this authorization. The issue is it's a different type of vehicle. We wanted the Ford Explorer, the 2022 Ford Explorer Hybrid, but what is being offered to us now is a 2023 Dodge Durango. It is not a hybrid. Each vehicle, there's a slight increase in price. Each vehicle would be $2,001 more. Everything else would remain the same. But again, they are not a hybrid. They are gas vehicles, and the numbers there are listed on the little chart. We will continue to for the fiscal year 23 vehicles, we'll continue to try to get the Ford Explorer Hybrid, but it's just very, very difficult. Everybody's doing the same things. Nobody has received any of the cars that they've ordered. So it's not just us, it's all the police agencies around. So this is an opportunity. The dealership called us to say, we can hold these cars for you. We have no idea when anything else will be coming in. So right now they are holding them for us.
And thank you, Chief. The one thing I'd ask you to expand on is, as the chief said, we recognize, and we were just talking about the town's commitment to sustainability, and we recognize that these are gas and not hybrid. It doesn't change our commitment to try to get hybrid or electric. And actually, in the last few days, the mayor and I have had a number of communications and some conversations about whether or not electric vehicles could be an option. The chief has looked into this in terms of some local experiences. Chief, can you report on what you learned about Montgomery County and Hyattsville and their experience?
Yeah, so this evening I spoke to one of the deputy chiefs with Montgomery County. He personally drove the Ford Mustang Mach-E's. He had one for 8 months, he said. And it is just it's not practical. The battery just isn't quite there. So the vehicles that the police department had purchased to fall under the PD are now under the county executive's office. They do have one remaining vehicle, but it's just used for community events. It's not in their fleet. I mean, I think one day it will be there, but it's just not quite there yet. The battery was just not able to perform. And then Hyattsville has, I think it's a Chevy Bolt, and the officer that drove that was their IT guy, and he has since retired, and it just sits. Their parking enforcement officers do drive, I think it's a golf cart, and they have a couple of those electric motorcycles, but the other vehicle that they have is not being used in patrol right now.
And Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but there may be opportunities for the town as things get worked out with options for electric police vehicles. There may be opportunities for when we replace the detective's vehicle or command staff vehicles for us to have electric. Is that the case?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. I mean, they're just going to continue to improve. So I think it will be there. It's just not quite there yet. But yes, absolutely.
I will add on to the town manager's discussion of the conversations he and I have been having over the last few days, that I will agree that it seems to be experimental use for electric vehicles in patrol at this time. And I'm disappointed that that's the case. I thought we were further along than that, but I will agree that does seem to be the case. And very late in the day, found out that many of those experiments are not going well. And so that's I wanted to add that point on to the discussion.
And then our request then is for the mayor and council to allow this substitution. We were very specific with the council, as we try to be whenever we have specific information. And we were very specific when we spoke with you on July 11th of 2022. And even with these three, if you allow this substitution, we still have 3 for the current fiscal year, and we have no idea when we may receive those. So we definitely have to explore options.
Any council questions or discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
I'm going to give it to Councilmember Smith. I think he unmuted first.
He did. He got it. I'll wait.
Yeah, I just want to note, I looked up the fuel economy on these vehicles and prep for this meeting, and yeah, it's extremely concerning, even, you know, relative to the Explorer hybrid, of course, because it's a hybrid, but even other internal combustion engine SUVs, it's pretty high. I'm not sure which model we're looking at, but you know, we talk about power. If we're looking at one of the VE8 models, that could be as low as 12 miles per gallon, according to the EPA rating. And we're not, you know, committing. This is a decision for now, but it's also a decision for those vehicles to continue that level of emissions for the cycle of their lifetime with the town. So yeah, I'm extremely reluctant to support this change.
And it's my understanding, and Chief, if I may, first, Mr. Mayor, I forgot to ask for permission.
Please go ahead.
The 2023 Dodge Durango, just pulled it up online, is just under 20 miles per gallon. And now the police package may be slightly less than that because it has a different transmission. It has a transmission cooler, as well as it has a different engine cooling system as part of the police package.
Which model are you looking at, Mr. Town Manager?
This is a 2023 Dodge Durango. Yeah, I don't have the trim package, so I don't know the number.
Yeah, so I've looked that up, and there's, like you say, as you note, several different trim packages. And at any level, like the best we could do, if it is the base model with a 3.6 liter 6-cylinder engine, which I would assume is not, that doesn't work as a patrol vehicle. That one has city, which is what they're going to be driving most of the time, I would assume. City mileage is 19. That's the absolute best we could do. Most of the trim models are between 12 and 14.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead, Councilmember Enyang.
Yeah, it's just it's unfortunate that we're in a situation like this. One that I guess I'm hearing two things. One, that just the supply is not there, but then two, the actual use cases of other municipalities using electric cars are not sort of meeting the needs. And I apologize, it's been sort of like maybe predated me on the council, but what are the implications if the cars are not sort of fulfilled? And are we burning the candle on both ends with not having these vehicles in? Does it mean that we're going to incur additional costs and maintenance for keeping older vehicles longer? Could I get a sense of what the implications are for not replacing these cars?
Mr. Town Manager.
Financially, sorry.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to ask Chief Gwixens to speak about the vehicles that will be replaced by these three.
So, okay, so the vehicles that are being replaced, we would replace 2 of the 2012s that we have right now that are approaching 200,000 miles. We're spending a ton of money on fixing with the construction on Kenilworth Avenue. These cars are taking a beating. So we have 4 in the shop right now. We have 28 total that are functioning, but 4 are in the shop. The repairs just continue to get higher and higher financially. So we're in a pretty dire situation, especially since if we don't jump on this, we have no idea when we'll have this opportunity again or what could be presented to us. This was just a phone call because we've been waiting for so long.
And Chief,
So yeah,
Chief, can you comment on the third? You mentioned the 2 2012s. It's my understanding that we have a Tahoe that would be replaced as well.
yes, a 2012 Tahoe that has about 186,000 miles on it right now.
Okay.
So we're milking these cars as best we can to get them across the finish line, but it's getting harder and harder.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councilmember Lingua, go ahead.
I'm kind of seeing this as really a plan B, in the sense that we need to fill a need that we're incurring right now. And that there's nothing stopping us when hybrid vehicles do become available, be that say 24 months from now or even 36 months from now, that we could be cycling out somewhat earlier other vehicles in order to obtain those.
If we have the funding to do so, certainly.
Well, it's, as I think that's just going to be a matter of making that more of a priority.
Yeah, we can do that.
It's there would have to be choices made, but I mean, if while it's we're not able to now acquire free hybrid vehicles due to essentially them not being available, and if we're going to sit here and try and cobble and paste vehicles that are really way past their prime, way past a point where we would be able to put them on a secondary market in terms of ridding them of the town's inventory and at least getting something for it. While
So,
not ideal, the more practical thing would be to replace these with the Dodges. And on the other side of it is the other side of this coin is to be looking at in future CIPs to augment our schedule for the acquisition of hybrid vehicles that are able to serve in a law enforcement capacity.
That's a possibility, Mr. Councilman.
So that's my thinking on it.
Any additional council comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? So just so I understand the process, I mean, part of the issue is that there are vehicles that are designed and built specifically for police use. And so I presume that the Ford Explorer hybrids are not just something that you would pull off the lot of your local Ford dealer, but are a package that's designed for police. And And I believe that just has been true in the general United States car market of production shifting from sedans to being SUVs. Same thing is happening in the police world. And so basically all we can buy in a police package now is an SUV. And the hybrid is the best of them, but of course it's probably honestly much worse gas mileage, perhaps even the hybrid than the 2012s that we have that are sedans. And so it's unfortunate, but it's a question of providing our staff the supplies and equipment that they need to do their jobs. And so I guess my question is, in the highly competitive electric market, back when it was much more difficult to get one, then you could place an order for a vehicle and you would be in line with however many thousands people were ahead of you. And when your car rolled off the production line, then you got it. And it might be a year, might be 2 years, might be 3 years before that particular vehicle rolled off the line. And so is that work the same way in the police world, or can you not stand in line for more than a year? You have to jump in line when a new production line opens up. How does that work?
Chief, do you want to answer that?
In my elementary knowledge of how all of this works, I don't know that we've ever been in this situation before with all of these the shortage of these vehicles, and I think that's really the issue. Is just the lack of supply. I've never really personally been in this situation because I've never really had to order cars before, so I can't honestly say. But I just don't think anybody's really ever been in this situation. Unless you disagree, Joe.
No, I think that's true. I would add though that these vehicles, like the original Explorers, are on a state contract list. So the state bid the contract, and Hertrick is the dealer who's handling that. And in July of 22, we said we need 4 vehicles. And they said, sure. And here we are 14 months later, don't have them. And they have reported they have no idea when those vehicles may be available. So it's they have customers much larger than us. And what Lieutenant Slattery explained to me while the chief was out of the office last week was that there are some jurisdictions that have hundreds of vehicles that they placed orders for, and they don't have their vehicles either. So when ours come into Hertrick, it's a guess. Could they possibly come in a month from now? Maybe. Could they come in?
Sounds like not.
But could it be a year? That's a maybe as well. And I don't want to complicate this discussion, but we will be back to talk to the mayor and council about an update on our ARPA spending plan. And these vehicles are ARPA funded. And so we have essentially 15 months to expend or obligate the remaining ARPA funds. So that's hanging out there as well, along with the uncertainty about the other 3 vehicles for fiscal 24.
Understood. Okay. I may want to have Mr. Town Manager some detailed discussions with you offline about the process and understanding it a little bit better. So but don't need to do that tonight. So, council members, what is we need? We're going to proceed on this tonight. We need a motion to authorize vehicle substitution of previously approved acquisition of 3 marked police vehicles. Does someone wish to make that motion, or are we going to continue to wait for the Explorer hybrids?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Yang to authorize vehicle substitution of the previously approved acquisition of 3 marked police vehicles as documented in the staff memo. Discussion. See all sorts of open microphones over there. So
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
as the maker of the motion, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm kind of seeing this as a Hobson's choice. There's something thereabouts. I mean, it's not that we don't have any choice at all. It's just that the choices that we do have are not very good. It's a difficult position to be in. But being that what we've come through over the past 3 years and how that essentially turned production and supply chains on its head, it brings us to a decision like this. Yes, preferably having hybrids would be better, but we're not in a position really to obtain them in any short amount of time. I understand what Mr. Listician says in the sense of being could be a month, could be a year, could be longer. I kind of see all 3 of those as being possible, but not very probable. I think, though, if we're going to do this, that we do take into consideration in future budgets under future CIPs, that we find a way to accelerate acquisition of hybrid vehicles, not only just for public works or for general government, but also ones that would be able to serve in a law enforcement capacity, as I had mentioned earlier. That's my thought on it. I'm happy to hear what others have to say.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else wish to speak?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Smith, go ahead.
is this a simple majority vote?
That's an interesting question. I would guess that it's close enough to one that I presume it's, since it's a financial matter slightly, that we need to have 4 affirmative votes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, which I may be, because I think you know well more about this than I do. Since we are introducing it tonight, isn't there a higher threshold for passing it in the same session?
No, this is just a motion. This is not a ordinance change.
Understood. Yeah, I mean, this argument could cut any number of ways, with arguments about the amount of money you're spending on maintenance now versus the amount of money that we would save on fuel costs and any number of other things with hybrid vehicles. It really doesn't sit well with me that we're talking about replacing the police vehicles on a shorter life cycle, while buying vehicles that other cities aren't being willing to accept, in the same body that we've had multiple budget discussions where we outlined things we couldn't afford, including paying our staff what we all agree they deserve. So to echo my colleagues' remarks, this is a choice. We are choosing what is a priority for our community and what isn't. I just hope we all think about that as we consider this.
Sure. It's not a clear and happy choice. You know, there's good and bad on both sides. Other council members wish to speak? Any comments from members of the public? Councilmember Foe, you unmuted. Do you want to?
I just, I feel like any point I add is redundant. You know what I mean? I am torn either way. I'm drawn to Councilmember Smith's activism on the subject and frank dialogue about spending on this equipment. I mean, is my remembrance that we've had issues with Dodge before, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 2012 Dodge. Is that like this is a company that we haven't had a great experience with as it pertains to town budgets and police cars. Aren't the same make or models. I know. I'm just.
Mr. Mayor, I may comment on that.
As soon as Councilman Foe is done speaking, certainly.
Okay, I was just going to provide a point of clarification on that.
Go ahead. I think Councilmember Foe is done.
Yeah.
No, it's just what, yeah, just it's quick. Yes, the issue that we had with the Dodge Chargers that we had, as we were told then that we would save, they were 30% more fuel efficient. And we watched all that gasoline savings go right out in terms of getting brake service. We were seeing vehicles getting full-on brake replacements after 25,000 miles, 30,000 miles. Not just pads or anything, rotors, everything, front and rear. And this was happening on a number of vehicles that we got from them. I think virtually all of them. These are patrol sedans. At the time, the Dodges were, to use the euphemism, they were the devil we did not know. I think we are well aware of the issues with them, as I'm sure Dodge is, since that time. That was the background on the Dodges the issues that we had previous time we acquired them for the fleet.
Thank you, Councilmember. I appreciate that info.
You're welcome. I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that because that was at the time when I was reviewing all repair bills on any of the police vehicles.
I assumed it was from a place of knowledge.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilmember Inyang.
I think what was said is makes a lot of sense. I think for me, the tough issue is it appears that we don't have the cars that we'd like. We're offered maybe vehicles that, you know, we're hearing about past issues with Dodge, but if we don't take these, we go to the back of the line and not sure when we're going to get new ones, or we're not sure when we're going to get any other vehicles. And the current vehicles that are sort of holding on for dear life are, you know, at the end of their life expectancy. And so, you know, I think if anything, this increases the burden for other places in which we want to be more sustainable within the community, right? I don't really see an option to not take sort of I think it would be, I would say, reckless to pass on cars, knowing that it's been hard to even, it took us, you know, if it took us 18 months to get on the list and we finally get on the list and it's not what we want, to turn that down, not knowing when the next time we go around would be, I think, irresponsible. But I do say that therefore it increases the burden for other things. When we talk about reforesting in other areas, like maybe that increases our call there even more so, because we're not able to make these gains in other areas where we anticipated. So I sort of see this as homework for all of us as we think about other policies and areas, stormwater management, whatever it is, that we have to be even more diligent because we had an opportunity that we may be planning on that we no longer have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Well, I honestly think the town has been leaning in a lot of directions. I mean, the Riverdale Park Station neighborhood is, envisioned to be a high density, low car use neighborhood. We've been improving bikeability. We've been improving transit access. We have desire to get more train stops in the town center. So all these things contribute to the town as a whole. It doesn't, it's not town operations, but we are contributing to reduced carbon emission in all those ways. But yeah, I agree. If we can't make this work as well as we had hoped, then we have to lean in elsewhere and do more elsewhere.
Mr. Mayor, quick point on that,
Certainly, Councilmember Lingua.
which is why we support, separating bike lanes from the roadway so that people can bike and they can bike safely.
Of course.
It's one of the other ways that we keep leaning in, and I think we can find other ways to lean in and make other commitments to, address the town's overall aggregate carbon footprint.
Sure. And I'll just throw in, just for future reference, when hopefully there are some electric vehicles that meet the needs of our patrol vehicles, that the maintenance needs of electric vehicles are like really low. And the drivetrain is expected to last 500,000 miles. The replacement batteries are a significant expense, and I'm sort of watching that happen in my personal life. But the lack of maintenance for the electric vehicles is immense, and we need to take that into account when we're pricing them out in the future. Okay, any additional council or public comments on this? We do have a motion and a second, and if there are no additional comments, I'm gonna go ahead and do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
No.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Inyang,
Aye.
Councilmember Kellon,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 4-1. Next item on the agenda, item new business 5, motion regarding request for letters of support for County Council Bill CB 069-2023, the Walkable Urban Streets Act of 2023, CR 067-2023, Walkable Urban Streets Act of 2023. Looks like those are the same, except for the number. Anyway, and 68 specifications and standard 2023 urban street design standards. Staff presentation, I'm hoping.
Director Barnes, can you give a brief intro? I know, Mr. Mayor, I have not scrubbed the county's bills, but they are attached. Ms. Barnes, do you have anything to add?
Certainly, I would just add that the town received a request from one of our residents regarding these 3 pieces of legislation relating to the Walkable Urban Streets Act. So we have 3 pieces of county council legislation. One is the county council bill, and then we have 2 other council resolutions related to the same topic. And so my understanding is the bill outlines the Streets Act, the Walkable Urban Streets Act, and then each of these resolutions works on the design specifications and standards. And then I'm not certain about the second resolution. They're all very similar, but they all work together related to the walkable urban streets. So Mr. Barron reached out to the town and discussed the benefit of these pieces of legislation and requested the town to submit letters of support. It's my understanding that the county council bill is Councilman Olson's legislation.
And Director Barnes, do you know when we have until letters of support would need to be submitted?
I do not. I'm not clear on where it is in the legislative process. I know they've had first hearing, I think, on the bill, but I'm not certain when the next hearing is scheduled. It must have been, at this point, it will have been sent to committee, so I'm not certain. I did not see that in the county legislative database.
So my understanding, and this is from, again, some brief discussions with Councilmember Olson, is that the county council previously established policies for the county construction of new streets to require them to be pedestrian friendly and pedestrian safe. And the county has since not lived up to those goals. And so this legislation is intended to tighten the room that the their public works staff have in interpreting the law. Any council thoughts?
Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate, we live in a town where I think we have residents that are, dedicated and sort of following up on stuff like on policies like this. I think it's important that, the county continues to think and sort of lay out and reinforce the urban street design standards that they've made, and sort of reinforcing it to make sure that it stays up to code with standards. And I know we've talked about protected bike lanes earlier on in this meeting, but this is something that I think, we want to make sure that Riverdale Park, I would say, is in the forefront of sort of, being, leading proponents of walkable urban streets. And so would definitely encourage, the town council to support a letter of support for the bill as well.
Okay, thank you. Any additional council comments?
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Go ahead, Councilmember Lingua.
no time like the present to start leaning in.
Sounds good. Okay, do we, staff, are you looking for a motion of support to write the letter, or is it just the mood of the council is enough? What would you prefer?
I think our standard practice on this would be a motion, sir.
Okay, so can I suggest that someone make a motion to have the town write letters of support for County Council Bills CB 069 2023, CR 067 2023, and CR 068 2023 as delineated in the staff memo?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember, where'd you go?
I'm right here.
Yang. Sorry, I was trying to track the little greens, where the little green square had been. Is there additional council discussion of this, or council discussion of this motion? Are there public comments? Okay, I'll move it to a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Inyang,
Aye.
Councilmember Calon.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 5-0. Okay, next item on the agenda is a motion recording a request for letter of support for Transit Within Reach grant. Again, can we have a staff presentation on this grant request? It's not our grant, but just on the request.
Director Shelton, can you lead through this discussion, please?
I'd be happy to. Good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the public. City of College Park's Planning Department reached out recently, notifying the town that they have submitted a grant application to the Transit Within Reach program from the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments for 30% preliminary engineering plans, which would include bicycle lanes on River Road. This project covers approximately 0.8 miles along River Road, extending between Campus Drive and Hague Drive. I'm going to scroll down now to show the map. Oh, it's a little too zoomed in. Sorry. There we go. It's hopefully a little easier to see there. There we go. Okay, so it starts up by Campus Drive, where the College Park Metro station is, and it will extend south to Hague Drive. And the grant is a continuation of the grant is to develop designs as a continuation of a previous grant received from the Transportation Land Use Connections Grant, also from the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments grant programs. That the original grant was a more of an exploration study. It was trying to see what type of projects were even possible, and College Parks Planning Department determined that this is one that they would like to explore a little bit more, and that is what this grant application is for. This Transit Within Reach grant application. The application had been submitted at the time that we were notified, but I think that the mayor and council have expressed an interest in establishing bike lanes whenever it is advised by consultants and whenever it is deemed the wise thing to do. The state was included on the original concept designs and proposals, and they agreed that the road could indeed be modified to include bike lanes without any significant issues on this particular stretch. They did also say that currently the River Road section between Hague Drive and Kenilworth Avenue has more traffic than the more northern part here, northwestern part here, and that is why the suggestion is for it to only be in this area in red here between Campus Drive and Hague Drive. The application is for $80,000 to achieve 30% design. I know that the City of College Parks Mayor and Council granted a letter of support at their last council meeting, and it is the action requested tonight is that the mayor and council authorize a letter of support, also supporting the grant application that was submitted. If there are any questions about the grant application or the previous report, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Director Shelton. Members of the council, any questions for Director Shelton?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilmember Inyang.
I'm excited. Obviously, I think the conversation about protected bike lanes on River Tech Court, sort of there's an understanding that, you know, it's part of a larger ecosystem. And so a grant like this sort of explore for bike lanes on River Road makes a ton of sense. I am curious about why this wasn't extended to Kenilworth Avenue. I have a concern about sort of the lack of accessibility from Kenilworth Avenue from like bike lanes in general, and the amount of, it has its issues that we've all sort of talked about and documented. And you said the idea was that from the proposed Purple Line station to Kenilworth Avenue has more traffic. I'm shocked because I feel like anyone who kind of comes in, how many people are really turning off on, those other streets? Kind of like if you get in, you're probably taking it all the way up or making that left on River Tech Court and cutting through over the bridge. So if the grant is already in process and that's sort of outside of our control and we need to support the letter as is, then I definitely would support that. But I am curious on why not the extension to Kenilworth Avenue and what could be done to sort of include that. I would hate for something to be built and it stop at the Purple Line station there and not go to Kenilworth Avenue. I think that'd be a missed opportunity for sure.
Yes, and as you said, the report did say that there was more traffic along that area on River Road. I don't believe that they gave a I don't believe they gave their opinion on why that would be. But if I had to wager a guess, it might be because many of the industrial or office buildings rather here on, I think it's University Research Court. A lot of those the people commuting to those offices are coming down Kenilworth Avenue and using River Road as opposed to coming across Campus Drive and south past the metro station and past the FDA building. Especially those that are using the Beltway 495. As Kenilworth Avenue is historically or typically, I should say, much faster than trying to go down Baltimore Avenue. But that's just a hunch of mine. I can certainly look into that a little bit more for you.
Thank you.
Any additional council questions? Comments?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councilmember Lingua, please go ahead.
Thank you. More leaning in here. Mr. Shelton, regarding this grant, is this including, does it say if it's going to allow, is it going to include essentially separating the bike lane from the roadway lane, akin to what we're doing on River Tech Court?
I believe it'll include something along those lines. I believe that this grant application is to develop a design that would have more detailed information about exactly what's possible and provide some options. But I assume that would certainly be some of the options. Yes.
Well, like I said before, no time like the present to lean in. I would say if we are going to do a letter of support, that we would advocate for such a delineation, a physical delineation between the bike lanes and the roadway, because solid lines will not work. We see that demonstrated on a regular basis.
Councilmember, my understanding of this project, and I've seen some drawings or sketches elsewhere, is that it has separated bike lanes. Very.
Okay. So in a sense that they're putting up partition in between the bike lane and the roadway.
Yes, protected bike lanes, as we've learned the language recently.
Okay. My one question. Thank you.
And staff can make sure that we emphasize our support for that in the letter of support.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember, go ahead.
I just have a question out to Councilmember Adams of College Park about the continuation. I haven't received a response yet, but I'll report back to the mayor and staff and the remainder of council about their ideology on that.
Okay, thank you. So if there are any more comments, or is someone ready to make a motion to let me get the language right here. Make a motion authorizing a letter of support for the Transit Within Reach Grant Foundation presented by the City of College Park.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Excuse me. Motion by Councilmember Inyang, seconded by Councilmember Foe. Any additional council discussion? Any public comments or questions? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Inyang.
Aye.
Councilmember Callan,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 5-0. Okay, we are to the last numbered item under new business. Motion regarding the Harvard Loeb Fellowship Grant. And since I believe that this was introduced by Councilmember Inyang, does staff want to present? Councilmember Inyang, do you want to introduce this to us?
Sure. And I believe, yeah, Betsy's on as well, and would love to give her an opportunity. But essentially, Betsy Otto lives in my neighborhood in my ward, and we had a meeting last week talking about sort of the Loeb Fellowship, which she's a member, which she is a fellow, and the idea of using it as an opportunity, this resource of, experts in the field of design, to think about, what can Riverdale Park do to sort of think about, engage the community around, the history of sort of the Calvert family plantation, the land in which we sit and own our houses in, and sort of what does that look like? And there's an opportunity to sort of engage the community. And so we had a great conversation about it. I mentioned the idea of sort of Plumbers Park, and there's an opportunity to sort of, loop that into the conversation, but it sort of expanded to even broader than that. And then I know, reached out to a number of folks from the University of Maryland, their 1856 project, Riversdale director, Maya Davis. The list goes on and on and on. And Betsy's definitely been instrumental in that. And so would love to give her some opportunity to talk more about it if Robert's rules allows. But if not, at the very least, I think supporting it from the council in terms of a letter of support would go a long way in terms of the application process, which is, I believe, due sometime this week. So any type of, verbal support that we can offer would go a long way, I believe.
Okay, I believe that Ms. Otto can speak a little bit if she would like to. I would certainly, unless the council objects.
I'll make it quick. I know the hour is late, and thanks, Mr. Mayor, council members, and the staff from the town, and especially to Councilmember Enyang for his interest in this. This is just an opportunity. The Harvard Loeb Fellowship has 500 fellows over its 50-year history who are experts in all these areas. They have a small grants program which allows you to host kind of visioning workshops. I intend to apply for one of those. Maya Davis, executive director at Riversdale Mansion, is really excited about this. The university is very excited about this. And the idea is maybe to connect to various things that all of these different jurisdictions and organizations are involved in that could connect, including one of the things that I've talked about with Councilmember Enyang is the Plummer Park. And so we don't need anything from I don't need anything from the town other than just your agreement that, you would like to be, the town would like to be a potential collaborating partner in this visioning workshop. And then hopefully there could be some funding and other opportunities that come out of the back end of this too. Thanks.
Thank you. Council questions or comments or a motion, if you just want to make a motion.
I would say motion to approve a letter of support for.
About time. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion?
I think it's a great idea. Let's roll with it.
Yeah, Councilmember Inyang spoke to me about it on Saturday, and I think it's an awesome opportunity for us to get the ball rolling on this dialogue that needs to have so many different people participating in it at so many different levels. I'm excited to be a part of it. I'm excited to listen.
Yeah, as we were talking about the Plummer Park project and appropriating those funds and whatnot, if I recall correctly, I know I talked to Councilmember Foe about this. I think I gave this in remarks as well, but that the University of Maryland, similar to our town, sits on land as the blood of enslaved people in it. And that we thought, or my opinion was that the University of Maryland should, as such, contribute to the remembrance in the form of Plummer Park. So it sounds like this lines up exactly with that. So enthusiastically support.
Okay, fantastic. Any additional council or public discussion?
Just also, thank you to Ms. Otto for proposing this idea. It's really great and really exciting.
Thanks. Thanks for being so open to it. It's great.
Okay, I'm gonna move to a roll call vote unless someone else wants to speak. So I'm gonna start. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Inyang,
Aye.
Councilmember Kalan.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 5-0. So we'll get that letter as quickly as we can because I know the deadline is soon. So thank you. Thank you for coming. So that is the end of our planned new business. Are there any other items of new business this evening? It's awfully quiet, so I'm going to bring up one item that I got an email about. The Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development is sponsoring a program to distribute approximately 150,000 laptops through the Office of Statewide Broadband. And local jurisdictions are allowed to apply to do this. And the application deadline is sadly September 29th, so it's pretty soon. And so question one for staff is whether the town staff could possibly handle a project like this, finding recipients. It's of course intended for, the intent of the funding is to close the digital divide. So we need to find people who met the requirements of that goal, and then actually do the project. So that's question one in my mind, at least. Mr. Town Manager, any thoughts?
It's already been sent to the program. I just got a text that we sent it to our grant person and to Ryan earlier today. So I would say, yes, we'll figure it out.
Okay, and do you need anything from the council to continue in that direction, or is this?
I haven't read it. If we need some resolution or something, which sometimes that's required in grants, we would bring that back to you on the 18th.
Okay, very good. Anybody else from the council want to weigh in, or does this seem like a good idea? 150,000 laptops is a lot of laptops.
It's a great idea.
Okay. And I don't have anything else. Anybody else? How about a motion to adjourn then?
So moved.
Second.
In unison.
I'm going to give the motion to Councilmember Foe and second to Councilmember Inyang, and go with it from there. Do a roll call vote immediately, not discussed. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Inyang.
Aye.
Councilmember Kalam.
Aye.
And I abstain. We are adjourned at 10:34 p.m. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night.